Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So does rust on your pickups for your guitar affect its sound or tone? How about even your output? All right, so we have a bit of a debate going on Facebook right now. This very subject, right? Some guy asked, does rust affect it? The answer is actually yes, it does. Although we seem to have a lot of people that are arguing the opposite, saying, oh, it doesn't affect the sound or tone and la 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 la. Okay, so I have a little bit of an experiment for you guys, okay? So if you, this is my brand new guitar, so there's no rust on it. So we have sound, obviously, right? Now, brand new pickups, everything's working fine. Now, over the years, and depending on where you live too on this planet, how fast stuff rusts, because the closer you are to the actual ocean, like salt water, okay, the faster things can rot up on you without even trying. So those of you who live there are changing your strings more often, your pickups are rusting more. You got to do a lot more maintenance than the rest of us here that don't live in those areas. All right, so for this experiment, I have a chunk of metal here, okay? Now, magnets are magnetic, so there shouldn't be any interference, right? Okay, so this is kind of like our simulated rust. We have sound. Now let's put this piece of steel and make a bunch of noise. We've lost a lot of output. Okay, there's the neck pickup. Let's slide this over to the neck. Oh, would you look at that? Okay. Obviously, this is to simulate a lot of rust. So, rust can and does affect the sound or tone of your guitar. There's no way it can't. Now, I don't know about a lot of you, but I've been a guitar player for, over 40 some years. I didn't start taking lessons though until I was 14, so hey, there's a little bit of info for you. But I've been playing nonetheless. I'm also a bit of an electronics geek. I started into electronics probably when I was about 8. Started designing by the time I was 9. I'm also a certified Apple and PC technician, electronics technician as well, etc. I work on all my own guitars. I've worked on guitars for many people as well over the years, etc. Still do, in fact. But when it comes to your pickups, these are little magnets. And anytime you create something that can block them, you actually create less sound, okay? And you disrupt the tonal characteristics of the pickup, as we've just proved with a piece of steel. And this isn't all that thick of steel, okay? That's just a little over 1/16 of an inch thick. So it's not very thick steel. The idea here was to simulate it as a blocker like rust, okay? Now, depending on how rusted your pickups are, they could be extremely rusted. They could be a little bit of rust, okay? Depends on how fast you will actually notice this. The more rust, obviously, the sooner you're going to notice things just start sounding the same and blah, 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 right? Part of the argument is some of these guys are saying, oh, I got all kinds of rust and I don't notice a tonal difference. Maybe those guys are slightly losing their hearing. I have no idea. I still have perfect hearing. The advantage of me here is I didn't play in big bands with the volume cranked full tilt at 1,000 watts coming into my head, okay? So I've been able to retain my hearing without any issues. But the older we get too, we do lose some of our hearing. That's kind of a given. So I probably figure I got about at least another 10 years and I'm going to start losing some of it. But so far, cross fingers, we're still doing good. But I can notice the difference. Now, I've had guitars that have had rusted pulls on the pickups, and I've listened to the sound of them dirty as snot, and I've cleaned them up and listened again, and wow, what a difference. Makes a huge difference whether you're using new strings or old strings. And of course your strings will get rust on them too, and as your strings develop rust, okay, because people don't change their strings as often as they should. Most don't anyway, so there are those that do. But I mean, the lower the acid content in your body, in your skin, in your sweat, the less often you actually have to change your strings. But the higher the content of acid, you're changing your strings a lot more often. I know of a guy through a friend of mine that did all of his setups for years. Okay, and this guy's also a technician. Anyways, he was changing the guy's strings like literally every second night. Okay. There's also a few people on YouTube I've come across that have very high acidic levels in their bodies. They're changing their strings a lot, okay, because they just destroy the strings with rust, okay, into the strings, because acid corrodes, right? So anyways, these things will corrode too on the tops, and as metal starts to corrode or rust up, things kind of expand a little bit. Okay, so if you take a look at a car fender, right, scrape all the paint off of it and let it sit for a few days. You'll start to see rust develop rather quickly. Okay, and the metal being used on a car is actually a low carbon based metal as far as the body panels go. Your drums and your rotors are actually high carbon metal, and they rust up very fast. I mean, you could be, out today in your car, you've got a brand new set of rotors on, and nice and beautiful and shiny. You let that car sit for a few days, the rust starts to get at them really quick, and you wonder why your brakes are super sensitive really quick, until you clean all that rust off by burning it off, okay? And this is also how we get other problems with parts breaking down quicker in cars, but that's a whole other video. Yes, I'm also an auto mechanic for most of my life too. But when it comes to these little suckers, these are little magnets. They're made out of a material. These could be steel for all we know. Magnets are made out of a variety of materials. Now, Alnico magnets means that each pole is actually a physical magnet already. And these aren't equal, okay? Even when they cut the poles to insert them in here, they're not all exactly and precisely the exact precise heights. There's little variances, even though to the naked eye, especially when you put the cap on, and you squash that cap down, they look to the naked eye even. But I can see that this one sits just a hair lower. This one also sits a little bit lower, but the rest of them are pretty close to each other, okay? And that's with just my eyeballs, right? I can put this under a microscope and see even more how things might be out. But you can't cut the same piece of metal exactly the precise thickness or length every single time. Same as your diameter of your poles. There's little small variations in the diameters, even though they fit snug where they're supposed to. There are little differences, and every single magnet has a little teeny bit of difference between each magnet, okay? So, there's, and when you get into staggered height pickups, that's a whole other ball game with magnetic fields and how things are whacked, right? And this is a magnet, and it pulls at your strings. The closer it is, the more it pulls. Now, the idea is it should give you a little bit more output, and it kind of does give you a little bit more, not a whole lot, but it does give you a little bit more output when it's closer, but then it pulls on your strings more. And if your guitar was intonated at, say, this thing being 1/8 of an inch up from your pick guard, okay, and that's where you intonated. When you pull it down further to flatten it flush with the pick guard or push it up higher or any higher than the 1/8 of an inch, it actually does throw your intonation out because you're either having less pull or you're having more pull of the pickup at your strings. So when your strings vibrate and create their sound to go into these, because these are basically, a pickup is kind of a lot like a microphone, okay? So that's why we hear about microphonic pickups. So what is a microphonic pickup? It is a pickup that does not contain any kind of wax sealant, okay? Because they use wax, more specifically, paraffin wax is generally used as a wax sealant, unless it's coming out of a real cheap factory. They're just using general candle wax, which is kind of like why it falls apart so fast. But anyways, the more they allow this time to soak in the wax and at whatever temperature, okay, because they want to liquefy it the most that they can without having the flash point hit of the wax. Otherwise, you get little fires going on. But they want to liquefy it as thin and thin out the wax as much as they can so they can creep in between all the wires around the bobbin, okay, and into the pull area. And even into these little holes, wax can get creeped into there, which is good. That's what they want. They want to seal it. What's this do? It reduces the microphonics. In other words, when you turn up your amp and you go, hello, 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 you shouldn't hear anything if it was done properly. A high quality, well done wax pickup, you're not going to hear squat, okay? Unless you are full blast and you will barely hear anything like a whisper. But you better be standing far away from the amp because if you're too close, you can still feedback regardless. But a microphonic pickup that contains no wax or very little wax, okay? These pickups, you don't have to turn up your amp very loud and you go, hello, 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 and you can hear yourself as clear as day. It's like having a PA system, which is why the pickup will feedback very quickly, especially when you're on a high gain setting. It's going to feedback really quick. Same as in a hollow body guitar, right? Hollow body guitars, real hollow body guitars, have microphonic or non-waxed pickups because the pickups get influenced by the internal cavity of the guitar. So, for example, I have my Epiphone Casino here, and this has a set of P90s which are not wax potted. This is a full hollow body guitar, so there's no center block or anything. This is 100% hollow inside. Okay, so the sound of this acoustically gets out the pickups from the top side as well as the inside, and that influences the characteristics of the sound of this particular guitar. So if I took the same type of guitar, or the exact same guitar in fact, and I put a center block in, still using the exact same pickups, I could take the pickups out of this and put it in that. The sound is completely different out of the exact same pickups, right? And I do mean exact, because we would have to use these actual pickups, not another set like them, but these exact pickups. And you'll notice a huge difference in sound. I mean, it is night and day. Okay, now you're still going to get feedback because they're microphonic, okay, or non-waxed, but it would take a little bit more gain, okay, and volume to make them feedback, because this is less chance. This is a big hollow cavity. This is like a big tunnel inside, big echo chamber, so it's going to feedback a lot easier. Just like your acoustic guitars can feedback rather easily because of that big, huge body, right? It's a hollow body, the acoustic, and it's got a pickup located somewhere within it. Either way, it's going to feedback at high volumes unless you do certain steps to ensure that it doesn't do it or doesn't do it so easily, okay? So, a lot easier to control it. So, rust, will it affect the sound or tone of your pickups? The answer is absolutely yes. It has no choice but to influence it, okay? Now, some people can hear this sound, some people cannot. The amount of rust will actually make a difference in how soon you could hear it. So even a lot of those guitar players out there that are somewhat a little bit on the deaf side, okay, because there's a lot of them out there, they will be able to hear this probably only when there's an extreme amount of rust going on, okay? When there's, not as much or very little rust, they may not hear it because the frequency of their hearing can't pick it up. But if you were to put it under an oscilloscope and check it, you are definitely going to see those differences, okay? So if you have a pickup that's rusty and you happen to have an oscilloscope at home, check it out. Check out the resistance factor too and how much that is actually going to be altered a little bit as well with that rust. And you got to get all the rust out of there, and that's the fun part. You're only going to be able to get the rust off the top, so any rust that has gotten on the inside, you're not going to be able to do anything about, but it's more important to have that top rust gone. So you got to keep these clean, because this is the critical part, is the tops, right? And of course, around the sides a little bit here. but down underneath it's not as major of a critical thing, and they're usually pretty well protected if they're wax potted. But the tops generally they're not protected at all. So how do you prevent your pickups from rusting? There's another good thing we could actually add into this video. How do you prevent them? Well, I don't think you can prevent it 100%. However, if you are changing your strings, every couple of months even, like every 2-3 months, it doesn't hurt to actually take guitar polish and go over the tops of these, because that'll actually help keep them clean. Okay, it gives a coating, kind of like it protects the finish on your guitar. It'll actually help protect these quite a bit as well. So you can prolong the effect of rusting. I wouldn't say almost indefinitely, but for a lot of years before, it's going to eventually start to show some rust. But, you got to protect them. And the better you protect them, the cleaner you keep them, the longer they're going to last. I've seen pickups die from rust. That's kind of the way it is. And the other thing you're going to get too is if you have a poorly waxed potted pickup and you're getting rust, okay, or you have a low level wax potted pickup, because the waxing too, by the way, helps to change the tone of the pickup. If you have this same pickup with the same amount of windings on it, and you have one that's wax potted and one that's not wax potted, completely different sound, even with the same resistance, okay, coming off the wires. You can check the ohm meter, right? But if you have, say, 6 layers of wax, vacuum sealed and compressed, this is going to create a unique tone. Whereas if you have one that's, say, 2 to 3 layers of wax dipping, again, totally different sound. Okay? So, and we can't get even the ohms or the readout of the pickup on the meter to be exactly the same on every single pickup that's supposed to be the same. There's always that fudge room, plus or minus, because nothing's perfect, okay? But you can get things close enough so that you can dial in what you need. Now, these pickups too, these are dual rails, humbucker. These are also subject to rusting. A lot easier to clean though and maintain because you just go over the tops. Now, you can clean your pickups with probably your best idea would probably be somewhere around 2,000 to 2,500 grit sandpaper. I would not suggest steel wool because steel wool and magnets don't get along, okay? But the sandpaper, you could definitely use that and blow it out. Do not use the sandpaper wet. That's disgusting. And it'll make a real big, huge, cakey mess. But just dry sandpaper, somewhere around 2,000, 2,500 grit. You got to keep these things clean as possible. So if you do have rust, that's definitely an easy way to clean them, and you're not taking away main material. Although if you have rust, some of your main material is already gone anyway, but depends on how much rust is there that you got to clean up, how much material is physically actually gone from the pickup poles, okay, or from the bars in this case, because that's where that rust is coming from the metal. And as metal rusts, it reduces the amount that's actually physically left over once you get that rust out of the way. So anyway, hopefully this video helped you guys out. I kept it as layman terms as possible to make it easiest for you to understand without getting the rocket scientist part of it. But that's definitely how things work. And the rust actually will affect your sound or tone of your guitar. Like I said, some people will notice this. I know I can because I still have all my hearing intact. But a lot of guitar players, whether, you're younger and just starting to lose your hearing because you blasted too much, or you're an older guy, that has been playing in bands and cranked up, you've definitely lost a lot of your hearing, and there's a lot of things you're not going to really hear. But, other people can. But if you really, really want to see how much difference there is, get your hands on an oscilloscope. Okay, that is definitely one way to actually physically see the frequency difference between a dirty pickup, and then you go and clean it after, do it properly, and then retest the pickup again, and you'll see where the difference in the waveform is, and there actually is a difference with that rust or without the rust. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya!